Bucks County, Mr. Petri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I guess it's been a long debate, Mr. Speaker, and we are at a critical point and we have to make decisions. None of these decisions, Mr. Speaker, are easy. What we've attempted to do over the last 2 years under Chairman Taylor is to hold a series of hearings where we've discussed the various issues that are contained in this bill. And I have to tell you, as one member of the Liquor Committee, I never thought that anyone would be able to package all the different interests and into one bill that could act as a compromise. Quite frankly, I would have thought we would have had to go into individual issues and deal with wine in one bill, modernization in another, privatization in another bill, yet another bill, and so on and so on. This bill has some things that I think are favorable. It has certainly moved a tremendous amount. And what I want to say today, Mr. Speaker, for me and for the colleagues who I'm proud to serve with, Republican and Democrat, in Bucks County, contrary to some assertions by people who have no idea what they're talking about, this is really about protecting small business. And what is particularly disturbing to me, Mr. Speaker, are the number of people who would mischaracterize a position so that if you were naturally against this measure, for instance, that you would have to be for one group and against another. So to set the record straight, I believe that we have gone about as far as we can go for the moment in trying to protect some of our existing licensees to make sure that they have access to an opportunity. Many of them have been planning and thinking that something might occur, and many have said, oh, nothing will ever occur. Well, for those businesses that hold licenses, it's now time to start doing some critical thinking about what you want to do. And if you are a beer distributor and you want to remain a beer distributor, you have that option under this bill. But you also have other options, and all of them should be considered, Mr. Speaker. With regard to protection of public health and safety, there will certainly be added costs. There is no question. And we will need to deal with those, Mr. Speaker, in the budget process, which we certainly will do. With regard to enforcement, we will certainly have to deal with those issues in subsequent bills and measures. But, Mr. Speaker, in the end, I think the most difficult part in coming to logical solutions was not the lack of hearings. It was not the lack of attempt of members to learn important information, but quite frankly, it was the PLCB administration itself, not the workers, but the administration. You know, Mr. Speaker, it came to a shock to me when we had appropriation hearings, and I asked for a copy of the survey by the PLCB of what consumers that they serve wanted by way of convenience. And their answer was there was no such survey. How in the world can you run a business that serves people and not know for certain what they want? Mr. Speaker, that is not the fault of the workers who work in these facilities, many of whom have personal relationships with our customers. This is the fault of those who run the business. Ultimately, you might argue that it's the fault of the commissioners and the like, and who appoints them, and et cetera, and et cetera. So there's plenty of blame. The other tremendous disappointment that came up in the hearing was during the appropriation hearing, there was a question about what approach the PLCB would recommend if it was the will of this General Assembly to no longer be in the business of selling liquor. And the answer we received was that they had not been asked. Now, that was the testimony. I must say, as one member, I don't know that I believed that entirely. But it is very difficult, and I think our appropriations staff this morning did a phenomenal job in trying to identify what the economic impact of this proposed legislation would be, but they did it without the help of the PLCB. Mr. Speaker, when this matter goes over to the Senate, I am sure there's going to be a considerable discussion about the economic impact. And I certainly want to encourage the Senate particularly to look at the cost and the benefits of retaining a wholesale system versus not. And when the bill comes back, we're going to have an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to debate that issue again. We're also going to have the opportunity to debate retail issues. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I want to talk a little bit about the process for the constituency I represent. You know, Mr. Speaker, it's disturbing that for the last 3 or 4 weeks, there are certain individuals who will not identify themselves who have been calling into my district, and maybe some of yours as well. And while that's fine and that's an appropriate form of lobbying, this one group, or maybe it's multiple groups, did not identify who they were and instead switched the caller to my district office. So to my constituents who wanted to talk to me about this issue, I'm glad for your communication. I am sorry, though, that you were confused by someone. And I know some people may think I'm talking about a particular group that's in the balcony right now, but that's actually not the group I'm referring to, Mr. Speaker. I'm talking about the group that was trying to tell my constituencies that if you were against this measure, you were absolutely against small business. And we know in Bucks County, that was not our concern, and we made that clear point after point. So those folks, what I would tell the legislature is, if this is going to be the way that constituencies are going to be contacted in our communities and lobbied, that's fine. But you know what? The next time one of my constituents gets a call from a group that won't identify themselves, I hope they either demand to know who they are and how they receive their funds. Who is really backing, Mr. Speaker, the misinformation that is put out? And we've all seen them, because maybe some of your names, like mine, have been mentioned in certain blogs. Well, for you bloggers, my vote today is a yes, but it has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with your attempts to bully me. It's the process. We come into Harrisburg and we all represent our constituencies and we fight like mad for our constituencies. But when you get to this point and the majority will has been established, Mr. Speaker, that's the constitutional process of compromise, and that's the process of trying to recognize what people want. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I think members on both sides of this aisle understand that consumers want more convenience, and they're going to get more convenience one way or another. Let's see what the Senate does with this measure. There are a couple tweaks that need to be done, and Chairman Taylor, kudos to you for being able to at least put together a proposal that, while it may not make many people happy, in fact, it may not make anybody perfectly happy, it certainly balances as many issues in this industry as we could address. Remember one thing as we close, Mr. Speaker, and finally, we probably would have chose a different way to end prohibition than what was chosen, but we are trying to deal with what we were given. Thank you.